Okay, so I'm going to be doing a tutorial on this new door that I built with Jonny. This is the world's smallest 6x6 door as of the moment. So before we get started, let's just quickly show it opening and closing. This is the closing. It's not too slow, and then it's a little bit of a cooldown, but it's not too bad. And then the opening is quite slow, but it's only 900 blocks, so hopefully one of those things makes up for the other. I'm going to be doing this tutorial block by block, not layer by layer, but bear in mind that it probably won't be too easy to follow because I'm going to try my best at least to explain things as I'm going along, which means that there'll be a lot of destroying things later and putting new things in, especially because there's a large number of minecarts in this build that require slightly awkward placing. But that's just the nature of this. So this is the main part that's pretty slow. You should see the tape is slow and then the quad retraction is pretty slow, but it's quite nice and clever. So I guess that's a plus. Anyway, let's get started by building the piston layout. So of course we're going to want side pistons. Quite a bit changed in this door, but this is still the same. The top layout is still quite regular. This is the same size top as Exojet, his 950 block one. We didn't cut anything off the top of his door to make ours. We only made the bottom smaller, although just bear in mind that it's a completely new top. Nothing is copied over from Exojet's. So we're going to want 4 quad extenders and then storage on both, like so, and then the inputs are the following. They are quite basic on this one. Gonna want a repeater. Like that. The bottom layout is fairly different from other designs, but it starts with the same kind of base. We have a quad with the same inputs as a normal quad. What's different on this is the storage, because cutting one off the bottom of a 6x6 to make it this size is actually a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. So, and more difficult than Jonny thought it would be. Oops, all on one tick. There are none on more than one tick. And this input here. So now let's do the storage. So normally you just have 4 going. Oops. And normally you would just have 4 along the bottom and 4 along the top, i.e. 4 like that, 4 like that. But we can't do that on this one. So we have 3 across, 2 there, 1 here, 1 here, and 1 there. And so immediately before you even get started, you can see you lose quite a bit of space just to have this slightly awkward storage. Before, it wouldn't have taken up this space, certainly wouldn't have taken up any of this space. So we lose almost this whole layer because of the new layout. And then we lose all of the bottom layer here. So let's start with the input circuit. I'm not going to be building all of the circuit. That's probably going to be the case with a lot of things. I'll build them a bit at a time because it will make sense with the order of how things were built before and so on. So 4 blocks up there is the input, just a lever. And you're going to want to get a signal across with a dropper and a hopper. Make sure you get lots of hoppers and droppers ready because this door uses, let's just say it uses quite a few. I'm going to start with building the input circuit, which this dropper thing here and with the redstone blocks, this will be part of the dual edge. But first, let's just power these side pistons. This is nothing special at all. Just this with a repeater there. Now, the dual edge is a bit weird on this door. because we actually need to set, if we close the door here, you'll see we're sending 2 pulses to the bottom. And to do that, well, first we need the dual edge, which this dropper will be the dual edge, and the way that works is that on one edge, if we just get an output out temporarily, so on this edge, this block here will temporarily retract and extend back, and it will go over this torch which powers the dropper, and then on the other edge this redstone block will just retract and power the dropper, acting as a dual edge. The reason why that's temporary is because we have then these hoppers. This is where the first minecart of many will go, just a chest minecart. Put an item in the dropper. And we have that so that we can get a long off falling edge output out of this, so it will turn off a bit. Okay, what I forgot to do there was place the comparator. That's the first mistake of many, let me assure you. So that, see, it turns off for quite a while. That allows us, when we attach this, it gives us 2 pulses. And then that will go down here, here, get some regular pistons which will act as updaters, there and there, and then one there. And that's what we're going to do with the input circuit for now. There's stuff on this side as well, but that will be done when we've got a bit further with the bottom. But for now, the part of the bottom we're going to do is the piston tape and then the quad retraction. And the reason for this is that these are the parts that I built first, and it'll make sense in the order if I build them first on here. So the tape's pretty nice on this door. This side of the tape is very small, and the other side is a little bit unconventional, which allowed us to make it smaller than normal. So this side isn't really anything too out of the ordinary. It just hasn't been done on a record. The technology existed before, but it never really got used. And it's just a way of making it really small. So we have a block there, like that, and a torch. And then going up into comparator, and that's it. So the way this works is when a block goes onto here, we will power the torch, which will create a small burnout, so they only power twice, so it doesn't have a burnout. What's going to happen is it's going to power, but nothing's going to be able to push because this piston is blocked by this piston here. So this piston here can't extend until the item has left the dropper, i.e., and then which unpowers the comparator, which means that this piston will always power. There's no coordinate dependency on whether this dust will power this piston or this piston. And then once the blocks move from here to here, the item will go back in the dropper, repowering it. And as soon as a redstone block goes here, it'll just stop because it redirects the redstone. So that's all there is to this side. The other side is a bit unusual in that we don't use block detection, which is, I think, the first time that's ever happened since old small doors, from like back in 2013 or something like that. So we're going to grab this dust because we need that to go into this dropper here. So what we're going to have is this input is going to be replaced with hoppers and droppers. and you want to put 16 items into that dropper. Well, I'd prefer them to be grey, but you know, really makes no difference. And then you get an output. No, this should be a 1-tick repeater, not a dust. Compared to that, just to redirect, so this dust doesn't power that piston, which doesn't actually matter in the tape, but it matters because this circuit will get reused a ton later. And then torch, place a regular piston here, a block there, and then a sticky piston there. And then you want to quickly replace this block so that it's the sticky piston that's extended. And that'll be it for the piston tape. So I'll show you that working. So all you have to do is power this piston to start it. And so the item will go through this dropper, unpower the torch, and it'll basically just swap which piston is extended, which means that this side's actually very small as well. We just sacrifice some of this space for communication. But that's not really sacrificed because we'll end up reusing this all of this and this whole side in the what's it called? Quad retraction. Now we also make one extra enhancement to the circuit in that we're going to connect this thing here directly to the storage. And that's a small enhancement for the piston tape. All it adds is that it retracts the box at the end, which is very helpful. But that's completely crucial to the way that the quad retraction works. This is another thing to bear in mind. This part here requires you to use a transparent block in the door, such as a slab. If for some reason in your door that's a real problem, all you have to do is do that. One of those might have to be a slab for coordinate dependency, but I think you'll be fine. So if you do this, then you can just put a block there, but you know, a slab works perfectly fine. This here is your storage input. So when you power this, it will retract all the storage, and we simply join this up here. So that will retract at the end. Next, I'm going to build the main way that the quad retraction works. So we're going to start over here with, believe it or not, a hopper dropper. Like that, and we want to put a non-stackable item in it, so that the signal from the hopper will reach all along this line. We're next going to place a repeater here to join these lines. So this is a very nice timing that I didn't know before this door. Basically, it powers it twice. That's very normal. But the second pulse, even though it powers this line, doesn't interfere with these bottom pistons. And when you do it again doesn't interfere. So that's very nice, convenient. Very nice and small. So the next part is related to here. Once again, we're going to have droppers in this input. Drop facing that way, that's important. And 2 items in here. That is because it means we can power this line without unpowering that because there's 2 items. But as soon as we power this here with the 2-tick, with a 1-tick, sorry, we'll have 2 pulses and both items will leave, and we'll get a long off pulse. We're going to use that long off pulse going into a torch. Which will both give a long pulse to this line and send an item through this dropper, powering the storage. And finally, we're going to have this block here, monostable. And this, believe it or not, is the vast majority of our quad retraction circuit. So if it will do all of the retraction from this point. So if we power this back line with a 1 tick, and then again, and one more time, there we go, finished. Let me just give a quick explanation as to how this works, because this is really what allowed us to make the whole door be finished. So this is floor level. This here is an input. And this here, one more, is storage. Okay, no, I was right the first time. And just better repeat it as well. So when we send a 1 tick, what's going to happen the first time is this. We'll have that happen. Then that, while that's extended, the bottom one will power again due to this dropper. And then it will do that, which doesn't do anything. And then we have our long pulse. This will keep that powered. And then briefly, this will extend, grabbing that block. It will retract, and then we'll get a quick 1 tick from this monostable here. Next, we'll do exactly the same thing. So 1 tick, power, 1, and then do that, and then we'll have a long pulse. And then this here will extend, but it can't because it gets blocked by the piston head. Then it will retract and give a 1 tick. And last but not least, we'll have this, that, long pulse, power, doesn't do anything, retract, 1 tick. And there you go. That's the complete sequence done. So we'll get onto the rest of the quad retraction after we built the rest of this side, because the quad retraction is over here. But first we're going to do the bottom closing. Okay, let's keep going. Next we'll be building the closing circuit for the bottom, which is in orange. This is also one which we'll have to rebuild a bunch of it to place minecarts. Just a heads up. So we're going to start with a regular piston here, a cauldron. On the server they automatically get filled up, but fill it up. Get a slab going across. Going down into this will make a 1 tick. And you'll see immediately we are powering this dust here, which goes into the storage, which gives us the 1 tick. And we're also unpowering this torch, giving us a quick 1 tick as well. So immediately from here, we've already got that, which is almost the entire closing. We control most of it from the top, which is a bit unusual. The other move is slightly more complicated, but really quite cool, in my opinion. So we're going to get a sticky piston here. This has to be a sticky piston. 2 cauldrons. And you're going to need to get a glass bottle and take 2 out of each, so they only have 1 in them. That is so that this here only powers this 1 dust and doesn't power any of these pistons. So this might look to you, especially when you put this extra piston here, like a dual edge. It's very similar to the classic dual edge of this. And this is a dual edge. This works as a dual edge. And this would do. This, in fact, does. If it weren't for one thing, and that's that when you send this 3.5 tick pulse through 2 pistons like this, especially with these updates, each time you send it through a piston, the pulse shortens. And this piston here ends up getting powered with a half-tick pulse, I think. I think it's a half-tick. Either way. What that means is that this cauldron will instantly be pushed to here. Which means that the comparator doesn't turn off, which means that this second storage doesn't power earlier than it should, because eventually we'll connect this comparator directly to the second storage. That's why this piston here needs to be sticky, because a regular piston doesn't support that instant block movement, I think. So that happens, and so what we're going to do is we're going to actually unpower this comparator when we push them back up through this regular piston. And we do that through here with a redstone block. So what will happen is now, if we power it, you'll see it will do everything. Well, we haven't connected it, but if you observe it there, you'll see that this only turned off once, and that's because this gets one ticked, which means next time when this pushes down, because it gets pushed down twice, this here won't be able to extend because it gets blocked. Which means that this dual edge, which you'd think if it gets powered twice, would give 4 outputs, 2 from being pushed down and 2 from being pushed up, actually only gives 1 in those 4, which is quite cool. The way we join that up to the pistons is also relatively clever. We have this torch here. This directly powers 2 of them. It directly powers this one and this one here. And then we simply take 2 repeaters across, that powers the other one. And then to power this one is a bit awkward, but Jonny found a fantastic way of doing it, and that's with droppers and hoppers. So you're going to, well, we just placed them, but remove that and place droppers like that. You can only place 1 item in the dropper, and then you're also going to want to place a dropper and a hopper the other way. These will get powered directly by the comparator there, and the item once again in the dropper. And what this will do is it will simply act as a toggle, which means on one edge, during the closing, the item will go into this hopper and get stuck, constantly powering that, and then the other edge, it'll just go back again. So let's just show you all that does in this rather small amount of circuitry. And of course it works on the other edge as well, thanks to the dual edge. So next what we need to do is push the blocks up, and that is the responsibility of the quad extension circuit, which is magenta. So that also starts here from this block. This is going to have a lot of awkward hoppers and droppers, just a heads up. So first we're going to get our outputs. These will just be a bit easy to place now. So the output comes through here, out of that dropper into a hopper that goes down into there. That adds a little bit of delay. And that goes straight into here. This, as we used before, is a way of powering this bottom input. So that's what we use. Obviously nothing there. So the item will go through that dropper, go through there. But for the quad extension, where we want to have the piston tape, you'll know that we want to push it up twice. And that was a bit of a challenge, but that's what we use this space here for. So the problem is that due to this circuit here, which I explained earlier, we can't, at this point in the quad extension, we cannot allow both items to come out of this dropper. It would break. We can only allow 1 item to go at a time, and we've sent 1 item through already by powering this. So what we need to do now is have enough delay in the space that that item can return to the dropper before we power this input again. And finding that amount of delay was a bit awkward because we also wanted the very minimum amount of delay possible in order to be able to get the other move of the quad extension, which I'll show you later. And the way we do it is with some quite clever minecart placement. So just, this was not a good order. Well, we're going to have to remove some of them anyway. So just make sure you replace everything that you break. Trap chest as well. Like so. And so basically, in order to return to this dropper, which is the home dropper, we need to get from this hopper to this hopper with no delay. And luckily that's possible with minecarts. So just place a dust there, just so we remember. Next, you're going to want to get a fence there, a rail, and a minecart hopper. Must be a hopper. Rail facing in the right direction. And then the hopper there in the middle of the two blocks. Next, what we want to do is place another hopper, another minecart on top of that minecart, which we do like, oops, this. That's not right. We want it one block over, like that. I think that will sit happily on top. And this hopper, this minecart's actually, because it's sitting on the minecart underneath, which has a smaller hitbox than one block. This minecart's technically sitting within this block. See, I can't place the block here. You can hear me clicking. And that means the hopper can put an item directly into this minecart chest. The minecart hopper will instantly suck the item out of the chest, and then the hopper will instantly suck the item out of the minecart. To replace the things that we broke, you're going to need to push this block in with a piston, like that. And then you want to get a comparator, which will be sitting on the slab as before. Going into your block and torch, and of course that cauldron there. We'll get the output out of this hopper here, which goes into a 3-tick repeater, powering the line again. Because of the nature of this dropper loop, we can't only have this one item in, so we also have this item. This dropper here only ever gets powered from the comparator that I placed earlier in there. And when that gets powered, it'll go into the dropper above, which will then get powered by this repeater. And that will power this line again. We then also need one more item in here just to complete the loop, because there's a few droppers. It takes things a little while to get through the loop. And for the part we're doing right now, that should be it. See, that extends now, and we also get our second pulse there with a bit of delay. Now for the other edge, it'll do exactly the same thing, but we also want at one point to give these pistons here, the storage, not that one, these storage blocks here a pulse. And I shall do that in one moment. And for the next part of the quad extension, we're going to get an output from here with a 4-tick. And we're going to make basically another dropper system, because one of the problems we face at this point is we need to power the storage, and yet the only way of inputting the storage is from over here, because you can't power it from the side at all, because this repeater means that it's a one-way input. And so the way we end up powering it is through this hopper chain here, through here. That extends it. Unfortunately, that doesn't extend the pistons for long enough, they retract too soon. So what we need to do is send 2 items through. So it does that. And as it turns out, with everything else in this door, that's not the easiest thing to do in the world, but we found a way of doing it. And it's not actually through sending 2 items from that dropper. I shall explain. What we actually do instead is we have 1 item from this dropper that goes through, and 1 item from this dropper here that goes through that loop. So basically what that means is this, well, once you place a minecart here, just a chest minecart, we'll have this item that will go through, it'll go through these hoppers into this dropper, into this chest minecart, and then go through the loop, powering it. We'll also, because there's a comparator under the minecart, that will power this dropper, which will send another loop. So what it will do when we power the dropper, so we'll get a nice, after quite a long delay, we'll get those together. And then we'll end up with the same amount of items here, but also this magenta block and no magenta block in here. So what we then do is we have an item sorter underneath. I don't think I've seen this in a tour in a while, so it's quite nice to see. The way this one works is you go into the dropper here, you completely fill it to the brim with the item, the same item you're going to use here. Probably use something cheap like snowballs. That's stacked to 16, that's fine. And then this one, you want to fill it to 5 and then 1 there. Next, you want a hopper there, going into a dropper, going into a hopper, which goes back into the original one. So we then place a comparator there, 1 item in this dropper and 1 item in this dropper. So what's going to happen is the item will go into this dropper, down into here, and then the way the loop finishes is that during the piston tape, well, this dropper here is constantly getting budded from here, and during the piston tape this input's going all the time, so this dropper is getting budded, but it never updates. The only time it gets one update once in the whole door, and that's from this dust here powering, I think, at the end of the piston tape, which means this dropper only clicks once, which is fine. That means the item will go up into that dropper and also power the comparator, which will send the item, an item from here back, which will basically replenish the whole loop. So see, now we have 1 in here, 1 in here, everything in here, and 2 back in there, as it should be. If I give this, I need to place the torch anyway, so we'll have all of that. Especially when we place all of items back in there, that's important. And then when we power that again, everything goes back to how it was. So now if I show you what happens on the opening edge of the door. This will push in at precisely the right time. It'll pull down, but it's fine because we start the tape. So this side here needed to be on the minimum possible delay for the quad extension, because this side over here is on the maximum delay I could find. You've got 3 hoppers and then all of these hoppers here. There's a lot of delay. I couldn't find any way of adding any more. And so I needed to take away as much as possible from over here. Okay. So the top powers the piston tape, so we don't need to worry about that. And then all we have left is the quad retraction. And given that we know how this part here works, we've actually got a fair amount of space. It was difficult, but we managed to get it to work. First part of this is to detect when the piston tape is finished. And we do this through a hopper dropper. Basic, that way there. You want to place 22 items in this. like so. Then you get an output out of it. Which will go down before you place the redstone. In fact, on a hopper, because it's on a hopper. But before you do that, you want to place a redstone down here so that this dust here gets redirected so it doesn't power the torch. And then, so the items swap, you want to get a piston and a redstone block like so. In here, you want to place 9 items, followed by a shovel. And that will go into here. So basically, this thing here is a counter type thing. As the tape goes, more and more items will get caught in this hopper. And when this dropper finally runs out of items, the redstone block is actually only about, I think it's here. It's not finished yet. And the reason for that is that then we have all of this delay here to power before it extends. And the reason for that is we have a tick perfect thing here without any repeaters to make it tick perfect. So you have to make it tick perfect off hoppers and just hoppers, which isn't very easy. Basically, you'll notice if I power the piston tape that this here, the part of the quad circuit, is actually powering. If I get an output out of it, you'll see, especially if we make that a slab, so I'm not sure this will work actually, but we are getting, in theory, an output coming out of that. And what that means is that when this finishes, we get an output, and we do get that 1 tick coming from here. And by making this push-up tick perfectly, we get to use that 1 tick, which is otherwise being wasted. It's just a byproduct of this here being here for the quad. We get that will power the pistons at this point, retracting our pistons here. Basically, 2 moves for the price of 1. All we need is this delay circuit. We then also do have to wait for the items to go back, which means there's a long delay, but it's the only way we can get it to work. But because there's that long delay, we also then need to wait before we power the rest of our quad retraction circuit. And the way we do that is fairly simple. We simply get an output from here, because when this input here is being powered for a long time, there's an item is being caught in this hopper and it's being locked in there. It can't move until it gets unpowered. We'll have a bit of delay, and you see there the comparator powers. And then all we have left then is to give this line here some 1 ticks, which we use all of this space for basically, because there's a couple awkward placements. Before we get started, we're going to want to place a redstone block or something here just to power that redstone. So we want to place hoppers like that. And a piston here. This was going to be just one of your normal bog standard monostables like this, but for now we're not going to put the block here. That's because we're going to actually remove a couple of these things so that we can place these minecarts, because once again there's some awkward minecarts. This one here is a bit weird to place, and the reason for this is that we have, oops, that wasn't intentional. And the reason is that we have the dropper here, the one I just removed. That's a hopper, but you know, we have a dropper there. And so we need to place a minecart hopper, but we can't allow it to take items out of here. And Jonny found a good way of doing this, and that's simply by using a chest. So you place a chest here, and you get your minecart hopper. And that's pushed, because the chest hitbox is slightly smaller than the block, it's pushed very slightly into the block, but it's not pushed in enough that it'll pull items out of this here dropper. See, if I put an item in here, this here doesn't suck it out. But this minecart hopper will when it's not locked, because currently this hopper here is locked by the thing. You see now the item's not in there, it's in here. So that's a nice cheat for you. Then place a block here, retract it down. And then what we're going to want to do is place another, what's it called? Mine carts, but this time a chest going along here. Like that. Not like that. It actually needs to be on this one. My bad. So the item, we're going to put 3 items in here, and they're going to end up in the minecart hopper. So now we actually want to get an output from this. So the way we do it is pretty nice and simple, kind of. Oh, oops. Just replace it. Let's replace everything we broke first. So remember to put an item in here and an item in here. Everything else in that loop should be fine. So now what's going to happen when we put the droppers right is that's basically everything. The item is going to go from will go into this dropper. That dropper will get powered by that comparator there. But because it's only budded, we need to update it. And this is where the nice new feature comes in. And that is the note block. This is now a block updater. So that will give us an update. We did have a version of this before 1.13 when that was added. But basically that solution entailed having droppers going around this entire thing, going through with this whole input just to make it back to this hopper here. This hopper is important because it gets locked in all but the end of the piston tape, which means that the items in this loop will only, they won't keep going in a loop. They'll get stuck in this hopper until the next time the tape goes. Speaking of which, did I actually put any items? We'll find out if I put items in there. If you're not playing 1.13, then I won't bother showing you how to build that because it's kind of pointless, but you can just place a rail there and it will work fine. And that there should hopefully be everything on the bottom. Let's find out what I've forgotten. Oh, I'm missing a row of pistons, but that's fine. And then on the opening, okay, the top will start the piston tape at the right moment. And then we just wait because it's kind of a bit slow. And in here you'll see the items are slowly decreasing. And one more. That's run out. See that piston there retracts. The items are going through there. Then we wait. Okay, I didn't put the items in the loop again, but that's fine. Just put your 3 items back in there and then power that. And then you'll see that the door finishes itself. And that there is the bottom done. All we have to do is power the piston tape and that's controlled by the top. Speaking of the top, we shall now go on to that. Okay, now we're going to be going on to the top. Hopefully I can remember how this one goes. So we're going to start from here. We're going to get a 4 tick going across into light green because that's the color of the top closing, which is what we're starting with. You're going to get a repeater, a couple of repeaters like that. we're doing a pretty standard closing deal here, which is that we just join these inputs together with 2 1-ticks. Finally, you want to place that here because this will be able to act as your, it is like that, I think. Yeah. Update piston, because that's about it. Although we can only ever power this line with a 1-tick during the closing and the extra moves. Other than that, we have to power this line with a 0-tick pulse of maximum 1 or 2 microticks, which is what we do, but that's so that this line here never will get powered unless it's intentionally by a 1-tick, which currently we're giving it a 1-tick, so that's fine. We want to give that line 2 pulses though, and so what we're actually going to do is go up here and make sure this one here is a slab. Like that. And then we're going to go down here onto a block of sand. This is color-coded sand as far as I see it, so that's fine. And then we're going to want to get a signal into that. It's going to need to be 15. So you can either do that with a furnace that's full of items, but for me, that takes too long. And it won't be finished by the time this tutorial is finished. So what I'm going to do instead is put 2 droppers facing into each other here. And then fill both of them up with items. There are more efficient ways you could do that, but that's what I'm doing. The reason why it needs to be 15 is so that this comparator here can get an output when there is a furnace, an empty furnace here. It's a fairly well-known trick at this point. And that is so that we can power this line however we want over here without the signal going across through the comparator. But when we power this here, this falling edge, it will power, and we're going to power that a lot because that we end up using this for the what's it called, for the extra moves as well. So our extra move circuit is quite small because we put our extra move circuit within our top closing circuit. Now the next part of, so this will automatically do a fair little bit. I'm just going to disable the bottom as well. So I'll do that, which actually isn't as much as it should have done. I'm not quite sure why, because I don't have an item in the dropper. We can try that again after resetting it. Yes, so it will do that. We need to push it down one more. And the way we do that is through the beginning of the quad circuit on the top, which is in yellow. So you want a 4-tick and a 3-tick going into a dropper hopper. Jump out of that. Going into, oh, this has to be a slab. I always forget that. Going into another dropper hopper. Which goes into a comparator and a 1-tick. And that will go across powering this line. Although because it will only be a bud, we need to update it, and we do that with a couple rails. They are rails rather than pistons because this line cannot also power this piston because that will break it. And this is a way of getting an update without powering this. So anyway, we could find. So now, if I reset this, and do that again, you see it extends all the way, and it stays extended because this input redstone here has locked the item in the hopper, which is pretty clever. So now what we're going to want to do is get a falling edge of this, because we need the quad to start powering pretty quickly, because we haven't got long before the bottom powers, and the quad needs to have fully extended before the bottom powers. So the way we do that, we got our falling edge here, and we're going to use another bit of sand, although of course I'm going to color code it here. And we're going to get an output from that through this hopper. It needs to be a hopper, and that is because we need to put a rail on top of it. That is because this piston here is only budded, and we need to fit an updater in here, which means a rail works fine, but because it's a rail we need a container here that is transparent, so this repeater doesn't power it. Otherwise it wouldn't work as an updater in the first time. But we also need to be able to put the rail on top of it, and the hopper is the only transparent container block that you can put a rail on top of. So then we get an output from here, going into a 1 tick, going down, and across, like so, and also across here. Oops, keep that on 1 tick. And 2 ticks, like so. So when we put our updater piston here, you'll see when we unflick the lever, it will not extend, because I think I got a timing wrong. Okay, let's just, if we power it here from this is the input to the quad. Oh, of course. We need to extend this signal along here. I can't remember what this delay is for. To a 3 and a 2. So now when we do that, see that extends and retracts there. So the nice thing about the circuit is, if we then just add this pulse here, and then we do that whole thing again, so we'll send a 0 tick, but for now I'm just going to use a 1 tick. It'll retract. But that's it. All we need to do is have that one extra pulse, which I showed you, and then power the whole thing again, and it'll work. And so that extra pulse comes through a little dropper toggle, which we fit in this space here. So you want to get a dropper facing up here, across here, like so. And then your 2 tick. And then the item in the dropper. So that will give the extra pulse. So now you have that. And so we need another toggle to do the refire, and that comes from here. It's a bit of an awkward circuit, I'll admit. Oops. Like so. Replace your 4 tick, replace all your dust. Item in the top dropper, and place a minecart like so. And then get a signal up through this torch into a 3 tick, into your monostable, which makes a 0 tick. So now if I power this, you'll do the whole quad. All we have left to do now is the extra moves and the rest of the input circuit for the bottom tape, and we'll go on to that in a minute. Okay, final couple circuits we have left. First we're going to do the input circuit. It's a bit bigger. And so the first thing we want to do is detect when the door is open and closed. And this I took basically directly from Exojet's, slightly different configuration. I'm going to have a dropper facing into another dropper with 2 items in the top dropper. Basically the idea is here that the only time that we'll get 2 pulses quickly through this line is during the closing. So both the items will go into the bottom dropper. They'll make their way back up in the opening, and then in the opening the top dropper will only get powered once. Will only ever get powered once at a time, which means that we'll always be getting a signal out of here. So basically, if this comparator is on, the lever over here is off, and vice versa. And we're going to use this to power the side pistons and to power the tape. So for a moment we're going to have to go back down here to the bottom, because we actually power the side pistons from the bottom and we unpower them from the top. The way we do that is through that piston, which updates this piston. It goes up like so into another piston like that. This will simply power the sides with redstone dust. So in the closing, both of these items will leave, which means that this can powering the side pistons when it gets updated from the bottom. And then at the start of the opening, the one item will return back to the dropper. This will push down, unpowering this, starting the timer for the tape. And this will never unpower during the opening. It will only ever unpower during the next closing, which means that even though this gets updated and powered all the time, it can't push up. So we get an output out of it through the this hopper system here. I'll explain why there's 4 hoppers rather than just 2 in a minute. So we want a repeater on, is it 1 or 3 ticks? 1. Repeater on 1 tick with a torch for later. And what are the items? I think it's 12. 12 items. 12 items in there. That gives the right amount of delay for the tape to finish. Before we want the tape to start, sorry. And then we get this going down here, going into here. This is a falling edge monostable. So it does nothing when it extends and does that when it retracts. That's the reason why we have 4 hoppers here rather than just 2, because if we just had 2 like so, the item would go too quickly into this hopper, and basically when this is pushing, the side pistons extending from this over here would actually update. These side pistons would update this, meaning the tape would power on the closing, which we don't want. So what's going to happen is in the opening, this will retract, this block will temporarily go up, allowing this powered on dust to flow upwards, powering this piston. And an advantage of that is it means it doesn't power side pistons, because one thing I don't know if you noticed during this door, the side pistons never spam at all. They are never needed for an update, and they never get powered by something that they didn't need to get powered by. And that's all that will power the tape. In order to push the items back into the top dropper, we're just going to get just a dust and a repeater there. That will power the bottom dropper. All we have left now is the reuse, and we've actually already got most of that here, in a way. So what we're going to have here is a torch, and we're going to whip out the hoppers and droppers for the last time. So that torch is going to power both of those droppers. It's going to power the bottom one first, so the item will go through both. Then we're going to have 3 hoppers like this, and then we're going to rip all of this out. This is to get our outputs, as well as to create a bit of delay. So we have hoppers going along the whole thing like this. Replace your inputs. Gonna want another hopper like that. And then to get our outputs from this, we put that there. That will power the part of the closing that will first give a 1 tick to the line pulling the blocks up from the ceiling, and then going through the comparison repeater back there into these ones, back into the storage, which will start the next, which will put the blocks in storage and then start the next quad. So to finish the loop, what we're going to do is put 2 hoppers like this. We're going to temporarily remove that, even though we just placed it. Get a fence and a minecart, and obviously a rail. Like that. So the item will go straight from this hopper down there. And then another minecart. Yep. And then what you want to do is put another purple block here, and then 2 in here. So the first quad gets powered straight from the lever, and then the other 2 quads get powered from this. This is a counter, so the items will get released from this hopper at the beginning of during the closing, because this torch will turn off when the redstone block comes up, and then this torch will turn back on, meaning the items will get released, will get put out of this dropper one at a time, powering the next one, and 2 items means you'll get 2 extra quads. So the one at the beginning plus the other 2, that gives you all 3, and that should, in theory, be the entire door complete. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to power it and see if it works, and if it doesn't, I'll cut in and we shall fix it. First, I'm just going to fill in the door frame. Yes, okay, and now we're going to remember to replace this and update the piston, and then power the door. See there, all the side pistons went. The cooldown here is caused by these hoppers. You need to wait for these items to finish transferring before you open the door. And then we watch it open. Okay, the first quad finished, and the next ones have started. The tape started correctly because the timing worked, and now all we have to do is wait, because as I said before, this door is pretty slow. So that there is the top finished. It is now stopped, and we just have to wait for the bottom. But we've already watched the bottom work, which means we're pretty sure it's going to work. So that's going to be all for this video, and probably for the next, I don't know, year or so, given my track record. So thank you very much. I hope this, if you're building the door, hope it works, and if you're just watching it to understand it, hope that some of the explanations in this video made sense. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. Thank you very much, and see you next time.